Hello there, Jorbs here, coming at you with another Spire side chat. We're looking through some of the Watcher cards, talking about if they're good, how they're unique compared to the other three classes, which you're probably more used to seeing and playing. And today I want to talk about Wallop. Wallop is a 2 energy card which deals 9 damage. I believe it dealt 10 damage at first and then was nerfed. And you gain block equal to unblocked damage dealt. And the immediate comparison that your mind might make is to Dash. Because this is a card that looks at first like it's very similar to Dash. It actually isn't very similar to Dash, but it looks like it is. Dash is a 2 energy attack that gains 10 block and deals 10 damage. And so Dash is a card for Silent, which is very good in Act 1, okay in Act 2. By the time you get to Act 3, this card's only really exciting if like you have a Snecko Eye, and even then it's not that exciting. Dash is a card where the way that Silent scales into late game fights is usually based around like powers and dexterity. So dexterity wants your block cards to cost 1 so that you can play lots of them in the same turn and keep getting more and more benefits from the dexterity. Silent is a class where if you are scaling in a way that you want to play lots of attacks, you're usually scaling in a way that you want to play lots of low cost attacks because you're like going to proc a kunai or you're going to play a finisher at the end. But on highest difficulty, Silent also is a class that doesn't often want to scale in a way that involves playing a lot of attacks. In the highest difficulties, once you get to the end game boss fights, you're usually thinking about doing things with poison because poison is so good at single target damage over time, which is exactly what you need to be beating the heart. Or a crippling cloud is a way to deal very well with a lot of the fights in like Act 2 and 3. And so Dash is a card which like has numbers that look like they might be sort of similar to Watcher's Wallop's numbers, but it exists in a completely different card pool. So its value is very, very different. And also its numbers are actually mechanically not at all similar. So Wallop does deal 9 damage, which is close to 10 damage, right? But it doesn't gain 9 block. It gains block equal to unblocked damage dealt, which means that you gain more block. Well, you gain less block with Wallop if something has a shield, worth pointing out. So you want to make sure that you can support this with other ways to remove shield for those fights where there are shields, and the simplest way is just have other attacks to play first, I would say. But Wallop deals more damage and gains more block if the enemy is vulnerable, or if you have strength, or if you're using one of the Watcher's stances which cause attacks to deal more damage, like the Wrath stance which doubles the damage dealt, or the Divinity stance which triples the damage dealt. And so this card can quite easily, without that much help, by itself scale to a point where it's blocking for like genetic algorithm levels of damage. This card can be very, very strong if, for example, you were to use Meditate to make sure that you had it in your hand on the same turn as you used Worship to gain 5 Mantra and enter Divinity stats. Worship actually upgrades to have Retain, and so it's very easy to put this combo together because Worship is retaining in that way. And then when you enter your Divine stats, your attacks are dealing triple damage. Maybe you've had the ability to put vulnerable on your enemy using a card like Crush Joints, which applies vulnerable to enemies. And all of your strength is tripling in value too. So say you have like 3 strength because you have a Vajra giving you 1 strength as a relic and you drank a strength potion this fight. Your Wallop is going to hit for 36 plus another 18 from the vulnerable is 54 damage. Off that Divine stance. And you're going to get 54 block off of it. Dash doesn't do that. Yeah, Dash just doesn't do that. There are very, 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 very few runs where Dash does something like making you 54 block for 2 energy. You would need like to have Necronomicon, which incidentally works with Wallop. So if you had Necronomicon with Wallop in this situation, it would give you 108 block. um, but you'd have to have like Necronomicon and a ton of dexterity and probably some other weird things going on too for your dash to be making you 50 block. But this is actually a thing that Wallop can do, and it's not that hard to make it do that for Watcher. And so with access to Wallop, Watcher has the ability definitely to create some turns where she makes a ton of block. And because of that, in a lot of heart fights, the heart is an enemy where in 1 out of every 3 turns it doesn't attack you at all. And then in 1 of the other out of 3 turns, it does an attack for like 50 damage or whatever. But in the 3rd turn, it does this multi-attack, which scales up as the fight goes on. And at some point, it gets to a point where it's hitting you for like 120 or whatever. And Watcher is actually able to survive those sorts of turns by cleverly setting up Wallops. And there aren't really other cards in this card pool that like do that by themselves exactly. If you look at the like big quotation marks block cards from rares, it's like Spirit Shield. Yeah, this blocks for a lot, but actually doesn't really have ways to buff it in the ways that you can buff Wallop. So actually Wallop is like higher potential upside than Spirit Shield if you build your deck cleverly. Or you can like get Wish to have a bunch of plated armor, but you're gonna get like to a point where you have like 12 plated armor or something. That's gonna be great, but you're not gonna get more than that because Wish exhausts. Or you can have like Water to basically have like a very strong metallicize effect, and you can stack multiple copies of these, but you're not gonna get that many of them. And so if Watcher wants to make tons and tons and tons and tons of block in a turn, the ways that you do that are like have tons and tons and tons and tons of cards like Water, or have stuff going on with Establishment or Deva Form, where you're able to play lots and lots of cards in the same turn, and maybe have like a Dexterity potion or something. It's a little bit difficult for Watcher to scale Strength and Dexterity. There is Fasting available, which can sometimes work. You can cleanse a debuff from Fasting with an Artifact potion or with orange pellets from a store. So that can make the gain 1 less energy at the start of each turn less of a big deal. Also, sometimes if you have a Deva form, it doesn't really matter that you have 1 less energy at the start of each turn. Yeah, you can like do this and then spam a bunch of block cards, or you can have Talk to the Hand active on something and be getting 3 block every time you attack the enemy. And you can use that plus a bunch of attacks that you spam to make a lot of block. Or instead of doing all of those really complicated things that include a ton of different cards all at once, you can have Wallop, and you can just like go into Divine Stats for a turn and play Wallop, and boom, you block for 50. It's a card that is just immediately good in Act 1 because it's great against Gremlin Mob, it's very good against Sentries, it's great against Lagavulin, it's good in all of the Act 1 hall fights. And then it's also a card which fairly easily combines with the ways that Watcher has to increase the damage that attacks deal to block for an incredibly large amount, with like any luck in the way that you draw cards or a little bit of card manipulation to make sure that you draw it on the right turn. And so I think a challenge looking at Wallop is that maybe the first time you see it, you think Dash, and maybe your mind is programmed to think, oh yeah, Dash, that's a good card for early game, and then it falls off late because you want to scale in the ways that Silent scales. But when you look at Wallop, you need to remember that this is not Dash, and the ways that Watcher scales, they really love Wallop. So this is a card that can block for an incredibly large amount and can be a central part of your plan to survive the big attack turns in the final boss fights of the game. All right, hope you enjoyed chatting about Wallop with me. I mean, working through some of the cards for the Watcher here. Did I show you the upgrade? It upgrades to 12. I'm not sure I ever showed it to you. Anyway, yeah, cool card to talk about. Cool card to play. It's one of my favorite cards on the character. Hope you're having a great day, and I'll see you next time.